Hey guys, so this is the panel on the NFT curation ecosystem. So we'll have a discussion on the value and the emerging NFT curation ecosystem. So quickly, Daniel, I work at Stakefish and F2 Pool. I do protocol research and governance. And we have John Lee and Sean Bagat, who are both founders of NFT specific curation projects. So what we can do is we can just go, I guess, this way. Sean, I think you're next, and then John is at the end. If you guys can quickly introduce yourselves, what you guys have been doing in the cryptocurrency ecosystem, and then briefly a little bit about what Masterfile is for you, Sean, and then what SZNS is for John. We can take it from there.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Sean Bagat. I'm the CEO, one of the co-founders for a company called Masterfile. We're building out Web3 tools for Web3 native media organizations. And there's a couple of different really cool pieces of software that we're releasing over the next couple of months. We made our introduction to the space in about February at the Ethereum Denver conference, where we placed fourth out of about 102 teams with our project called OpenDRM. And that's something we can go into a little bit of detail later. But yeah, that's a little bit about us and what we're doing.
And hey guys, I'm John. I'm one of the co-founders for SZNS, leading product there. What we're building is a user-curated fund for NFTs, where any artist or curator can create baskets of NFTs for others to collect and invest in. I think we announced the project back in March, and very excited to get ready for launch. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So maybe we could kind of define or talk a bit about the NFT market in general, and then what specifically curation means, where it's at right now, and then what you guys kind of see curation looking like, obviously on your own platforms. So again, I mean, this can be a question for both of you, and we can go in the same order. But like, I guess Sean, first, what would be your, I guess, opinion, like very general, high level opinion on the state of the NFT market? Market meaning it can be both meaning value and kind of the direction of the types of NFTs and projects that you've seen.
Good question. I think personally, I agree with the school of thought that we're finding concept market fit with NFTs right now. And I think like DeFi protocols and NFTs are introducing a lot of non-crypto native folks into the ecosystem, which I find to be really exciting. And I think what we're seeing right now is there's just a really good foundation being built to start to understand the impact that NFTs can have on society. And I think with that, with like companies like Masterfile and SZNS and whatnot, we're starting to see a lot of awesome infrastructure that's going to be built to support what NFTs can do and how it can have an impact in society over the next few years. And I think that's just incredibly exciting.
I guess my opinion is that over the last 6 months, we've kind of seen the foundational thesis for NFTs play out, where the important players like Beeple and Rat Pack kind of set a foundation for a digital fine art concept to like persist. And now it's more about a discovery of what about particular NFTs makes them valuable. And as a community and a market, we start exploring, I guess, what that looks like for NFTs, as well as surrounding services for NFTs that, are value adding for people as collectors and creators.
Yeah, it's interesting because, right, I've been at least to friends of mine, like pretty outspoken on some concerns I've had over the meteoric rise of valuations that we've seen with NFTs, maybe with specific very vocal minorities kind of hawking certain projects over others. But right, to your point, John, there, in terms of NFT valuation models, right, with maybe you can talk about like utility, how do you see, I guess, that fitting into what people are doing currently, right? Because right now we just have people collecting art, and then it stays in their, let's use OpenSea as an example, right? It stays in their wallet or like their display case, and there's just like a huge mishmash of, right? I have some hash mass in there, crypto corgis, like crypto right? Like crypto kickers and stuff. And it's just like, it's all like thrown into like one closet, right? And not necessarily as organized. And obviously curation seems to be a point there that is hopefully solving that. Do you think curation specifically beyond organization has the most impact on NFT value? Right? It's kind of like is the sum greater than its parts, right? Or individually or independently? Because I've also been quite vocal on like where value can come from separately, right? Right, interoperability and utility, and we've seen like stuff like NFT Bank that is doing that kind of stuff. But yeah, maybe we can go from John, you, and then Sean about like value and its connection to curation from what we have presently, which I think there is no curation, or I don't think there are any like curation. Right, everything is just like it's just there. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, I like to draw parallels to like real other world things, and NFTs are kind of unique in the crypto space where it's very friendly to mainstream, right? Like people understand NFTs very easily. The concept of like provenance or even like authenticity verification for digital art is a very like tangible concept for people to understand. And like with that in mind, we have a fine arts market that has existed since, I would say, since civilization, right? Like humans have been, I guess, exploring and collecting art since, I don't know, however long. And when we look at what prices and valuations for fine art look like, I would say that's also a developed market with various participants who have strong opinions on what makes certain art valuable. I think those same types of like practices, if you will kind of develop in the NFT space, where you're going to have experts, a set of, I guess, well-informed artists or collectors who start converging on a consensus of what makes NFTs valuable. And what we can do as builders for that is, how do you then create a service for these people in terms of, one, how they evaluate NFTs, or how to improve their collecting experience, right? I think like when you mentioned that there are right now a bunch of us who have random NFTs in our wallets, and there isn't exactly like I guess a set of options we can explore with those NFTs. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's an opportunity for us to kind of explore what type of things we can create for NFT holders in aiding an overall market move toward a proper valuation, if you will, if such a notion exists, right? But like, some people might view people's art being sold for like 69 million as something that's like ridiculous. I don't think so, because like if you look at the fine art space, like the non-crypto fine art space, there are plenty of artworks that sell for even more than people's works, right? There's plenty of living artists who have their works sell for like 90 million. I think that's actually the highest. But so when we take a look at the existing systems today, then there's opportunity for us to kind of improve on that. With digital fine art, with NFTs, I think the main point is that provenance and being able to verify authenticity and a history of ownership. So with those core concepts, like how do we make art collecting more exciting, right, and accessible?
I think that's a really good point. I also think that there's a technology aspect that's going to help that. And I think a lot of the stuff that like you guys are doing and some other projects that we're working on is going to help that. I think curation is a really interesting problem in the space. When we talk to curators who are like working artists who work with like big brands, or like they have their own really successful art career, some of the folks that we're talking to are commenting that like they're actually waiting to get into the space because they don't want to list their art on a marketplace and not really have any control or idea of what their art is going to be placed next to, because that affects their brand equity. I think there's plays like Legend Art that's launched recently that has a very curated selection of extremely high quality artists that are solving that problem. And by being able to get access to really great artists that come from the traditional art world, bringing them into the NFT space, I think they're going to continue to bring in folks who are waiting on the sideline from the supply side to come in. And I think that's only going to benefit the ecosystem as a whole. I think another thing that's interesting about curation is that when we talk about the promise of blockchain and crypto, a lot of the times we focus on plays that abstract away the middleman. We really want to abstract away rent seekers, but I think when we look at something like media, there's a really interesting role that a lot of middlemen play in the traditional art space, in the traditional media space, and they're curators, they're tastemakers. Sometimes they'll help, they'll have their own market that they've actually built relationships with. And they'll help these creators who are really good at making art pieces and products navigate those markets so they can build up their brand, so they can actually focus on spending more time doing what they're good at. And I think there's an opportunity to transpose those folks from the real world off-chain into the on-chain ecosystem. I think we're going to see a lot of really interesting opportunities to do that. And I think that's a really interesting shift in mindset from always talking about abstracting away the middleman at all costs and whatnot. I think there's a really interesting opportunity to redefine the roles that those middlemen have, and hopefully a more equitable way for all stakeholders involved in these industries.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point you make, and I think it kind of it referenced kind of what John had mentioned with the user curated funds, where those that they themselves are the middlemen there aren't necessarily kind of like the rent seekers, but they are more of the, I guess you could say, the taste makers. To your point of brands not wanting to immediately jump into the NFT space because it doesn't make sense for them to just issue one-off NFT like Coke or something. They issue a one-off NFT, it doesn't make sense for them to make an NFT. They'd rather have something like Top Shots, where they have this whole thing where it's not worth their time. And also probably with the UCF concept, remember we had the token curated registries a few years ago that caught all the rage. And then I think another good point of relevance is also what you have with the graph, where you have this completely decentralized indexing platform, and the subgraphs themselves, Stakefish, the POS validator that I work at, we run an indexer, but then it's the subgraphs themselves that people curate to help people get more efficient indexing and data availability. And so, I think you make a good point, it's not, they are technically middlemen, these curators, but they themselves are not necessarily extracting value away from themselves, away for themselves selfishly, but more of constructively into the value add. So yeah, I guess another question that I'd be interested to get your thoughts on is with the let's say the collectors market, what we have at present, and then obviously with what you guys are building, which I'd like to get into in a bit. Where do you kind of see more other tools beyond what you guys are making that you'd like to see more of, Obviously, you guys are making these tools and these platforms and projects because you think it's valuable, and perhaps it's a winner take all market, where it's just you and it's just Masterfile and Seasons. But then I'm sure there's other complementary tools that you think are important for the curator ecosystem. I'd be curious what you guys think of that.
Sure, I guess I'll start. I think, Dan, you wrote a really good paper at Global Coin Research, the report on interoperability. I think that is the biggest opportunity for NFTs right now. That there's a lot of issuance platforms to get your NFT into space, but there's so many things that you can potentially do with your NFT that I think becomes extremely exciting. I think we're starting to see the blend between NFT and DeFi, which is going to be its whole space in itself. I think we're starting to see things in the metaverse as basic as something that's a gallery, but there's some really great platforms out there too. And then I think as the gaming market continues to expand and you have a proper metaverse that gets developed, there's going to be a lot of other things that you can do with your NFTs as well. And then I think we're also going to see some really cool concepts of taking the crafting concept from Wax blockchain and bringing it into Ethereum, leveraging the ability to do something like a collaboration with another project, where I'm going to collaborate with my brand's NFT, somebody else's brand's NFT, where we create a new NFT that's a collaboration between both of us. But you have to actually swap out one of our NFTs, one of their NFTs to get this limited edition. I think there's so many things like this that can be done. That's going to make a really fascinating space going forward. And you know, I think the biggest thing about interoperability from like a business standpoint is it creates the biggest opportunity for market expansion for all protocols. And I think that's really exciting for businesses to get behind.
What about you, John?
I think, I guess, aside from, I guess, what we're trying to do with From Seasons, what excites me is artists, like, you know, got into NFTs because it's a new model for them to directly earn income through their works, right? Without having to rely on a middleman. And I think if we, again, look at, you know, what is something we can improve on in the traditional arts market, an artist, they sell an art and they don't capture the appreciation of that art, right? And there is no standard set of, I guess, royalty collection for existing artists. But if we were to start, I guess, standardizing as an industry on what a secondary market for artists to look like through NFTs, and you know, personally, I might believe that 10% fee is a bit too high, but you know, as you know, what does the market feel about that? But at least build an infrastructure where a secondary market for NFTs does come with an expected or a set percentage of royalties. I think that's pretty exciting and something that differentiates NFTs from traditional art. I think another kind of exciting thing for me is the topic of like gaming NFTs. Like, I'm a big Axie collector, and I think Axies and other gaming NFTs introduce a very interesting concept of what happens when you give your players a lot of power and ownership rights through the NFTs and the game characters they own, right? Does that mean that they own a certain, they're entitled to maybe some earnings from the game characters that they now own, right? So there's a lot of like I guess interesting questions even regarding intellectual property when you start talking about what kind of rights does owning an NFT confer to a person, especially when that NFT is directly tied to the intellectual property of the entity that created it. So I'd like to see that kind of space be explored, not just in like the technological sense, but also in like a regulatory or kind of compliance sense as well. Like, what do we converge on as people and users that we like? I hope that it's more toward like user friendliness, because I mean, I was in a Clubhouse chat one time, and then one of the guys from like Riot Gaming came in, and he's like, why would we create NFTs? It kind of reduces our ability to capture more of the profit, right? And it is true. Like, when NFTs are an opportunity for users to get more power away from gaming companies, and and even though incentives drive everything, can we move more toward a world where like individual users are properly compensated for their participation, right? And that's interesting to me.
I think that's an interesting point, because like, it's not the same argument, but it's almost like asking a Web2 company that has proprietary software to open source all of their software. And you're just not going to see that happen because their business isn't structured that way. But you do now have open source companies that are starting from the get-go being open source, where they're building business models based off of that. And I think in the Web3 world, with what's going on right now, if we can align things the same way you're talking about with IP and trademark, we'll see some really cool Web3 brands come up with really cool IP that's built to succeed in that type of open model. Was it Bored Ape Yacht Club? I think is a really good example of that right now, where like when you buy the actual ape, you own all of the IP. And I think there's a really cool community that's spinning up around it, where they're creating different types of works and whatnot. I think we're already starting to see the early days of that, which is just really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, Sean, I guess like with the new types of ownership models, like, I know that Masterfile does have a solution to this called OpenDRM, right? Where it maybe stands at the intersection of these open source models from like the traditional world and how it can be potentially useful and maybe, dare I say, profitable for people in the Web3 world. Could you talk a little bit about that and kind of how you see that connected to the curation market?
Yeah.
OpenDRM.
I think ownership is a twofold problem in a digital world. Like John mentioned, it's a regulatory issue around IP ownership and whatnot, and that's something that the legal world has to hammer out. I think the other part of it is access that can be gated through basically technology. So OpenDRM is an initiative that our company is heading up. Our goal is to create a decentralized content gating protocol that allows you to mint truly rare digital assets and also power permission-based NFT experiences. So basically what we're doing is taking the traditional centralized party that was usually involved in DRM and replacing them with an NFT. This means that the owner of the NFT will be the only person who can decrypt the associated media, which is uploaded to Arweave in an encrypted way. And then once they actually transfer the NFT or sell it, their ability to decrypt and access that underlying media goes with it. And we believe this reflects a more traditional form of ownership, where if I own this thing, then I'm the one that can access it. And when I sell it, I no longer have access to this asset, basically, this experience. So we're really excited to bring in that optionality into the ecosystem as it continues to grow. I think there's a lot of folks that have a really compelling argument that is coming with the existing use cases of NFT, where it's about open ownership. And even though anybody can access the media that's connected to it, the fact that I own the NFT means that I own the original. And that's a really fascinating value model that we're exploring right now. We want to bring in the more traditional form of it because I think there's a lot of people waiting on the sideline, both creators of IP, people who own IP, and people who want to buy collectibles and NFTs who want to be able to have that style of ownership. So we're basically building that over the next 18 to 24 months. We'll be decentralizing into a fully decentralized protocol. And we're really excited to be building this on top of NewCipher. I think NewCipher's done some amazing work with proxy re-encryption. It's going to be a really cool use case for their technology.
Awesome. Before we finish, I wanted to talk a bit more about like how fractionalization with seasons, the user created funds and curation kind of fit together. Maybe the regulatory part of that might be out of scope, but I think there's some maybe examples of how you can see seasons using fractionalization for curated kind of collections to be. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So, well, one, I think this event was quite timely because starting next week, we're going to have some big announcements from Seasons. So excited to announce that. But in terms of fractionalization, I think there's two components. One, like what it looks like for curators and creators, what it looks like for collectors. When crypto's ethos is often, how do you democratize access to a wider range of people? In non-NFT space, just pure crypto side, it was often, like take ICOs, for example. People get to partake in these investment opportunities, whereas traditional companies, you have a select few group of people who enter into the seed stage and capture all of the upside. You broaden up the pool for regular investors in crypto. For NFTs, you have, through fractionalization, the opportunity to kind of give this notion of ownership to people who otherwise might not be able to purchase a whole Beeple asset, for example. So to give you an example of an anecdote, a coworker wanted to kind of print out Beeple's works, but he felt that he could, I guess, feel more connection to the artwork if he owned it, right? But now I think there is a case to be made where perhaps we can kind of explore what ownership looks like as a part owner. If you own a percentage of people's works, do you think that that gives you a even more of a psychological entitlement and ownership to being able to print out that art and say, I own a part of that? I think that's significant because as a collector, an owner of a fractional part of that art, you are able to not only capture the appreciation of that art, but also be able to claim some ownership of it, right? And and I think art is not just about finance, and that's why that's something that I'm excited about exploring with Seasons, where a lot of crypto people are very like incentivized by money, but whereas art, I think, is something beyond money. It's about like the collection experience. It's about the appreciation of the art itself. And how do you introduce, how do you take fractionalization and baskets of NFTs and create that kind of collection experience for people? So that's what I'm interested in building for I guess collectors and investors. On the curator side, it's a different way of people and art, a different way for artists to get their art out. Where traditionally, if you're an artist, the only way of having income is through sell individual pieces, right? But this time, they can create a UCF on Seasons and then have retain 50% ownership of the UCF, have others invest in the UCF, and effectively, what the artist is doing now is investing in himself. So they're able to capture the appreciation of their works, and I think it's a very powerful thing for artists to be able to invest in themselves. And hopefully, Seasons is a platform that they choose to do so.
Awesome. I think we have a few more minutes left, but maybe if I can get from each of you, let's say some NFT artists that you guys are excited about providing your services as to curate. Sean, and we can't say people because that's not interesting enough.
There, give me 1 second. Come back to me. I just want to pull up my list.
Yeah. Well, so we are going to announce some cool partnerships, but I can't say it here. Sorry. Wait till a few weeks later.
We're kind of in the same boat as far as who we're actually.
Yeah.
So I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So I maybe no alpha drop here. I guess.
Sorry, guys.
Awesome. Well, I will say that I'm part of Hondao. It's like this NFT and creative and metaverse kind of DAO and based in Korea, and we're definitely excited to start exploring different opportunities of using more tools for the creative ecosystem there. Yeah. So
I can share some cool art that I just got.
Sure. Let's see it. Do you have any? I don't think I've ever gotten a physical representation of an NFT.
This is
you have it?
Murakami's Floorball. Yeah. So I'm really hoping he makes NFTs because then I can pair it with this.
He did, and then he took it down.
And he took it out. Yeah.
Right.
Murakami, come to Seasons, please.
Yeah, I think there are issues with the storage medium that was being used. I think it's the whole rabbit hole of IPFS versus Arweave. I think.
Yeah, just use Google Cloud storage. Just kidding. Oh shit, I'm live. Damn it.
Can't take it back now. So.
I know.
But yeah, make sure you have the right Murakami because there's two different Murakamis, right?
Yeah.